from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. It's the 14th of July, and it's a true blessing to be here with you guys. It's about 7 minutes past the top of the hour. We're going to get rolling. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's plenty to discuss, of course, yesterday marking the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt on President Trump's life, where it grazed his ear in Butler, Pennsylvania. And again, what a sight, right? What a sight to see the shots ring out. Trump ducks down. He gets covered by the Secret Service people. And then he rises from the ashes like the phoenix, right? And he's bleeding from his ear. And he shouts, "Fight," with his fist in the air. Fight. Fight. I mean, what a moment, what a remarkable moment. Amazing to have watched that live and to be a part of history as that occurred, you know. Really was a thing. These are the things, you know, our kids who didn't watch it, or our grandkids one day, they'll think about this. They'll read about it in the history books and they'll have heard the story, but, you know, they won't know what it was like. I mean, of course, thankfully for them, there'll be video, which a lot of our history doesn't come with, but it's cool nonetheless. Anyway, so kudos to El Trumpito, saved by God, in my opinion, for such a time as this. And Cuomo is in, right? That's Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York. He's a disgraced governor, left because of a series of sexual harassment civil lawsuits. He announced that he is running an independent campaign for mayor of the city of New York after being defeated. He got trounced by Moran Madmani. That is his new name on this program. I'm not saying it wrong unintentionally. That is my new nickname for him until I come up with a better one. Instead of Zoran I don't know how to say the real name, but Madmani is what we're going to call him. Moran Madmani. And I'm happy to see this. I'm happy to see that Cuomo's in the race. In my opinion, this is reminiscent of a race for mayor in Jersey City in 1992. In 1992, yeah, I think it was 92. In 1992, you had a bunch of Democrats, I think 7 or 8, maybe 9, some high number like that, running for mayor of the city of Jersey City, New Jersey. And there was a Republican running, a guy named Brett Schindler. And while the Democrats were all duking it out in this mayoral election, he just went door to door talking about school choice, talking about issues that mattered to the constituents. And he left his job in Wall Street, ran for this position. And guess what? While they were all killing each other, it split the vote so much, he won. And that's exactly what I think can happen for Curtis Sliwa. And some left-wing commentators like Errol Lewis from New York One, the news channel, and Brian Lehrer from, I think he's from NPR. These guys, are typically not very friendly towards anybody right of center, but they recently said in a piece that they wrote in the New Yorker that they believe the same thing, that Curtis Sliwa has a viable shot of becoming mayor because the Democrats can't get their ducks in a row and figure out who's going to be their standard bearer. So when you have the sitting mayor who's such a failure that the only people that like him seem to be some of the MAGA Republicans because they think he owes Trump a favor, because the Democrats don't like him. They didn't vote for him in the primary, right? They voted for him last time, but they did not vote for him this time. You've got the former governor, Cuomo, who I like to call Kill Your Abuela Cuomo, because of his disastrous, lethal policy of putting COVID-infected individuals in nursing homes with our most vulnerable elderly population. And yeah, lots of abuelas and abuelos and grandpas and grandmas and lots of our beloved senior citizens were killed as a result of this. So nobody likes him, who had to resign in disgrace. And then you have moron Mad Manny. Now, he's an avowed socialist that preaches like a communist. He sounds like a young Fidel Castro. So the only one that makes sense here, the only one talking about cleaning up the streets, the only one that participated in the cleanup of New York when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, is Curtis Sliwa, right? The guardian angel himself. So I can't wait to see what happens here. And all these naysayers, listen, it doesn't mean that they're right and I'm wrong or vice versa. But it does mean you have to, we can't, as they say in Spanish, no podemos tapar el sol con la mano, right? You can't cover the sun with your hand. It's still there, right? Just because you say that Adams is the most logical choice because, some MAGA people are promoting Adams because they want to see a Democrat like Adams get elected, thinking he's the lesser of three evils. I don't agree. I think they're all equally as evil. Adams is overseeing the New York City, the same New York City that his comrade Bill de Blasio oversaw, doing the same exact thing. The only reason there's less crime is because there's less crime reported. If you don't report the crimes and you don't lock people up, guess what? You can say it never happened. It's kind of how it works. It's the oldest scam in the books. When people say, oh, but the statistics show crime is getting better. If crime were getting better, you wouldn't have people getting set on fire on a New York City subway. You'd have people that I know, lifetime New Yorkers, that actually still take the subway. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't. But there's a whole bunch of New Yorkers that won't take the subway. There's a whole bunch of people I know that used to go out to eat dinner in the city. They don't want to go to the city. They'd rather go the extra mile to Westchester or to Jersey. They go to Hoboken, Jersey City. Places they know are safer, where nobody's being lit on fire, where nobody's recruiting for the biggest transnational gangs in the world, like they have under Eric Adams' watch. So anyway, that's the story in New York City. But President Trump, he made this announcement today. President Trump made a threat to Russia. He told Vlad, listen, if you don't end this beef you have with Ukraine in 50 days, I'm going to levy 100% tariff on Russia. And he alluded to also doing it to Russia's trading partners, really trying to cripple them economically. Now, of course, the drama with the Epstein files continues. We're going to talk about that. And the investigations into John Brennan, the former director of the CIA, and James Comey, the former director of the FBI, those were announced last week. What to make of that, I'm not too sure, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later with former Watergate lawyer and former assistant United States attorney who'll be joining us. And lastly, the city of Chicago, or at least activists in the city of Chicago, last week we talked about this briefly where Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, said, I will not be participating in assisting law enforcement or anything. He's doubling down on his sanctuary city policy. Well, ICE pulled up in 15 cars to a museum, a Puerto Rican museum, to let them know, hey, look, we're trying to gather some information about this big cultural event you're putting on because we believe it's going to attract a lot of folks in the community that may not be documented. And now the community's come out saying this is intimidation. Imagine that. Imagine saying that the police saying, look, if we catch the people we're looking for, we're going to lock them up. This is now intimidation. Well, folks, I submit to you, I think most of us should be intimidated by the police if we know that we've done something that isn't above board, right? I mean, I just think that's a fair thing to say. So anyway, that was funny, and they were saying that they were there to deport Puerto Ricans. And this is the funniest thing, right? So are Puerto Ricans being targeted and intimidated by ICE? Nah, I say hell no. That's fake, it's phony, it's fraud, and we're going to get to the bottom of it when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue the conversation, and as I mentioned before, I'm marking myself safe. Why? Because I have not been deported. I have not been visited by ICE. Nobody from the Department of Homeland Security has come knocking on my door. Let me see your papers. None of that has happened, right? But yet the left will have you believe that if you're brown, they're coming to get you. Earlier today, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw a clip from a woman. It just popped up in my feed. And I've never heard of this woman. Let me see. I'm trying to find her name right now. But she announced that she's running a campaign for the 4th District of Congress in Illinois, right, which I think covers part of Chicago. And it was interesting to me because I loved her passion, right? And I will eventually find this clip and play it for you. The problem is she cursed a lot in the clip, and I can't play that on the air because then Commissioner Brendan Carr will get upset with us for breaking the FCC rules. But in essence, what this woman says is, and she's mainly a musician, right? She's a singer, but she was chiming in on political topics. And I noticed that those were the posts that got the most interaction on her social media feed. But anyway, she said something like, listen, just because you're Cuban or you're Puerto Rican or you're Dominican and you voted for Trump, don't forget that there were a lot of Jews that voted for Hitler. And I thought, this is a very uneducated comparison, but one that people are going to accept at face value without questioning, right? Because it's not like Trump has ever murdered anyone. It's not like Trump has ever put anyone in a gas chamber. It's not like Trump has ever said that one particular race is inferior to another. But they'll go ahead and say, well, he doesn't have to. He's dog whistling, you see. He does all these bad things because he's evil. No, I think evil is Hitler, who flat out said it to your face. These people are vermin. They have to be exterminated from society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I tend to not get into the Hitler comparisons because I think it trivializes the Holocaust, which I don't want to do because, to my knowledge, I don't have any immediate family that went through that. And I can't imagine what that was like, right? I mean, I watch Anne Frank diaries and I'm like, oh boy, that's some serious business. But to get back to this woman, she was talking about this story that came out of CBS, out of Chicago. I think I heard it on CBS News or WT something or other. Forgive me for not having it in front of me. But she was talking about this story where people are accusing ICE and the Department of Homeland Security specifically of intimidating people at a Puerto Rican museum in Chicago because they were overseeing the Barrio Arts Festival. And this is what I thought was interesting, that, again, I live in the Northeast. I live in a blue state. I happen to be Puerto Rican. I think I look Puerto Rican. Maybe I look something else. Most Puerto Ricans tend to pass for many different things. But I've never been approached by ICE. And I said the same thing when Mayor Ras Baraka, who I know, who I like. I don't like his politics, but I like him as a human being. I think he's a good guy. When I heard him say that a Puerto Rican was detained, a Puerto Rican who served this country in uniform, a military veteran, which could have happened, right? I could see somebody working in a facility where they were doing something, and they said, all right, you come with us. We're gonna. So we get everybody checked out. We get everybody's ID. We're going to find out who's who. That's, I think, typical law enforcement activity. However, Ras Baraka said that they took this guy into, yet there was no proof of this person. This person was not on the record. This person did not come out on the news. Matter of fact, Univision, I think in Miami, did a piece on the guy and obscured everything. Said, we spoke with this person on condition of anonymity. And I think, if you're trying to right a wrong, why would you hide your identity? If you're a citizen of the United States and you've been wronged, right? Because this is all a lie. That's why. That week, there were people on social media making videos saying, oh my gosh, I'm here in Puerto Rico and ICE just raided my bakery or my little shop, my little restaurant, my little kiosk where I sell fried foods. People were making up all sorts of stories saying that ICE was there to go after their kitchen staff and that they politely asked them to leave. And I think that's the telltale marker of these stories is when you hear them say, oh, and we asked them to leave. ICE isn't wasting their time. On, hey, how you guys doing? You guys happen to be harboring any illegal aliens? Yeah, mind if I come take a look around? No, we'd like you to leave. Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good day. There's way too much work on the plate here to do these things. These are fabricated stories to evoke emotional responses from people who are uninformed. That's it. It's that simple. Yet, here we are. So, before I run out of time, I want you to hear this report that came out just before the weekend. Listen to this.
By federal agents to bully and intimidate. Officials say immigration agents descended on the National Museum of Puerto Rican Arts and Culture in Humboldt Park yesterday. Here's 35th Ward Alderman Anthony Quesada at a news conference this morning.
What ICE is doing is that they're intentionally trying to intimidate our community members. So what happened yesterday was an intentional scare tactic and has nothing to do with safety. It was meant to send a message to our undocumented neighbors.
Hold on right there. So hold on a second. You mean to tell me that when there is looting going on or there is speeding going on a highway and they put a police car in a very, very visible location, right? Maybe next to one of those signs that says your speed is, and it clocks your speed. That's not there to scare people into driving the speed limit or warn them. It's not there to, quote unquote, intimidate. This is not a typical function of law enforcement that we put a cop in uniform in a very visible place to let people know, hey, I'm on the job here. I'm doing this. Don't do that. Of course it is. Now, I'm not saying that here's what I am saying. Forget what I'm not saying. What I am saying is for these people to say this isn't about safety. This is not about safety. This is about enforcement. This is about command presence. This is about the police letting people know, hey, we are here. We're on the job. Hi, we're from ICE, and we know you're having this thing. If you want to help these people out, tell them not to come because we're going to be here, right? I don't know if that was the message they were sending or not, but it seems like the one I heard. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. This is literally their job. They're employed by the federal government to be federal law enforcement officers in this particular area of enforcement and removal operations for customs and border protection and whatnot. That's what they do. Go ahead.
To our cultural institutions and to our entire community that they are being watched and that they are not safe.
Our own Matt Masterson joins us now with more. Matt, what do we know about what actually happened?
Hold on. So letting the community know. So you get a bunch of cops pulling up to your neighborhood, and now you're not safe. How are you not safe when you get a bunch of cops? I'm going to play the rest of this when we come back because he kind of explains, what exactly happened, and you'll hear the rest of it. But I want to take my time with this because from the report and the bias in the report that you're going to hear, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents along the way. It's clear to me that this is all designed to scare you, right? It's designed to evoke that emotional response that I was telling you about. So anyway, keep it locked right here, folks. We're coming right back. We're going to continue with this fake, phony fraudness that's coming out of Chicago. And it bothered me so much, I wanted to make sure I spent some time on it this evening. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're continuing with this, what my mother would call bochinche, right? The gossip coming out of Chicago, where they're blaming ICE and DHS for pulling up to a Puerto Rican museum, right? A museum of Puerto Rican culture, who's about to host the Barrio, the Barrio something or other, the Barrio Festival. The Barrio Arts Festival in Chicago's Humboldt Park section, celebrating Puerto Rican culture. Listen, I love Puerto Rican culture. My parents are from Puerto Rico. It's something I've grown up with. It's something I love. One has nothing to do with the other. ICE is not here telling people that they can't like their Puerto Rican culture. ICE went there and arrested no one, by the way, or DHS officers went there as part of what they said in a statement was part of a separate investigation into drug trafficking, and they had a conversation with these people. But the people at the museum and local activists decided to put on a press conference and say that ICE came to bully and intimidate them and came in 15 cars and yada, 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 and made everybody feel unsafe. And my thinking is, how does the police make you feel unsafe? Now, I've heard this argument from many people. I've heard it for years that, the police make me feel unsafe. And listen, I can understand it to a very small degree. If you, I don't know, let's say you grew up in a housing project in a very rough neighborhood, and most of your interactions with police were negative ones, maybe not yours, but the ones you saw in the community were scary ones. And then you have people like Al Sharpton and other race hustlers out there putting it in your head that if there's a cop around you, he's going to shoot you. If there's a cop around you, you're automatically guilty. Now, do I think that that's true? No. Do I think it's 100% not true? No. I'm pretty sure that that is a truth in some instance, right? You find a bad cop every now and again, but I think by and large, most cops are not bad cops. That's just the truth. And I know this from my own service as a volunteer to the police department in Nutley, New Jersey, when I was there for a little bit. I know this as my brothers served NYPD their entire careers, two of them. And they did this job, a very thankless job that can cost you your life, and I think they did it with honor. So my thinking here is that this is all people trying to get some ink, right? They're trying to get some headlines, some mentions out of it. During the break, I was talking to Mr. Good, who's on the 1 and 2 in the studio, and he was saying people's egos are just so big, they'll say anything and do anything to get some press. And I have to say, I agree with that. I think that's part of it. I think there's also a sinister part of this where people will do anything to make it look like somebody else did it. And there's a bad guy, because you always need a bad guy. And in this case, the bad guy is ICE saying, hey, we're here as part of a separate drug investigation, not ICE, DHS, and them claiming that they're there to intimidate the Puerto Ricans, with others in the community saying that they're going to actually deport Puerto Ricans, so make sure you have your passport. Ultimately, one person, this woman that's running for or considering a run for Congress in the 4th District, she said, it doesn't matter if you're Cuban or Puerto Rican. They're going to come for you anyway because you look like them. And I thought to myself, I mean, again, this is just simply not true. It's simply not true. When you see people that have a green card or have legal status and it's being revoked, it's not because they're brown. It's because they did something, a DWI, some other infraction of the law where they said, all right, now we're revoking your status. Or like in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, inciting a riot on the campus of Columbia University, which ended up in the hostage taking of a janitor, a Dominican guy of all people, right? And he was very vocal about it. I'm glad he's okay. So anyway, I want to pick up where I left off with that audio clip, because you had the activist guy yelling about how people in the community don't feel safe. And then they go back to the studio to give the reaction. Listen to this.
Community, that they are being watched and that they are not safe.
Our own Matt Masterson joins us now with more. Matt, what do we know about what actually happened yesterday?
So Homeland Security agents showed up without warning at the museum just after 3 o'clock yesterday in around 15 unmarked vehicles.
Now, let me ask you a question, folks. I was driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour, 98 miles an hour, 87 miles an hour. Whatever state you're in, that's higher than the speed limit. And would you ever say to yourself, and the state trooper pulled up behind me completely unannounced? Since when do the police make an appointment to pull you over and give you a ticket? Since when do they say, hey, how you doing? Even if the police are making a social call, they pull up and they're like, hey, good morning. How are you? We're the police. We're here for this reason. This is the way that these reporters describe this stuff makes it sound so sinister. The DHS officials arrived without warning, without being announced. What? I don't get that. I really don't get that. I have to grab every little piece of this so to show you how implicit their bias is. Go right ahead.
Vehicles. They arrived, this museum threw its leases on private property, but the agents still refused to leave when they were asked. They stayed on the property till around 5 p.m. At least one agent was granted access to the museum briefly. He asked to use a restroom and was allowed inside, but museum employees said that they overheard these agents talking about upcoming events in the area. They didn't give any specific reason why they were there, but they were discussing upcoming events that apparently may attract undocumented visitors. There's upcoming arts festivals in the area as well. No one was arrested or detained yesterday at the museum, but...
Hold it. So no one was arrested, no one was detained. So this was a social call, right? They were there for questions. They had some, information they wanted to gather. These guys are making it seem like a SWAT team came, like there was a raid on a museum. People are feeling unsafe. No, you know who should feel unsafe? The people that are walking to work in California and Los Angeles when all of a sudden some guy, some gangbanger on a Harley waving a Mexican flag is going to scream that this is stolen land and F Trump and this and that. Right? Or the people that are launching fireworks at law enforcement, or the people that are spraying law enforcement with mace, or the people that are throwing bricks at the head of law enforcement. That is a scary situation to me. But the fact that you got some cops coming to visit you, now listen, I can understand it could be an inconvenience, for sure. Right? For sure. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't care if you're a Jehovah's Witness or the local police or the local fire department asking for a donation. I don't want to answer my door if I don't have to. I don't want to talk to unnecessary people. I just don't want to. But that's a part of life, right? I can't always be this smug brat that I am and say, I don't want to talk to you. Sometimes you have to be polite and say, hey, how's it going? All right. Yeah, not today. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye. Right? This is part of being in a civil society. That's just how it works. Play the tape.
Employees there did say that they were intimidated, that they felt scared by the actions of some of these agents there.
And did the agents give staff any reason as to why they were there and in such large numbers?
The agents on scene did not. They provided very little detail to anyone on the location, but the department...
Hold on. Listen, lady, let me tell you something. You know why the agents are in large number? Because every time ICE agents pull up anywhere, like immigration court, to get somebody that is about to be deported, they're being attacked by everybody everywhere. They're being doxxed. Their children are being doxxed. So guess what? They have to travel in big numbers to make sure that they're okay, that they're safe. Because if you haven't noticed, there's a war on these people. Right? They're just doing their job. They're doing the same job that Barack Obama had them do. They're doing the same job that every other president before him had them do. This is what they exist for. Yet now, all of a sudden, deportation is a new thing. It was invented by Trump. Deportation is a bad thing that Trump invented. I mean, the logic here defies reason. Go right ahead.
The Department of Homeland Security today did confirm that these were their agents. Homeland Security, of course, oversees ICE as well. That these were their agents and they were members of their department, but that they denied that they were doing any sort of targeted raid or action at the museum. What they said was that Chicago's local financial crimes task force, through the Department of Homeland Security, staged a briefing in the museum parking lot, that this was related to an enforcement action from an unrelated narcotics investigation. This had nothing to do with immigration or anything about the museum itself. The Department of Homeland Security, in its statement, it's claimed that this narrative that it was a targeted enforcement at the museum is completely false, that there was nothing of that sort, and that this was an attempt by local officials to try and demonize ICE agents further.
So we also heard from several other...
Fake, phony, and fraud, right? And they're right. This was an attempt by local Democrats to try and make ICE look bad, to make Trump look bad, to try and make anybody that disagrees with them look bad, and so that they can have their 2 seconds or 15 minutes of fame. Now, why did I spend so much time on that? Why? Because this is affecting a lot of people. In a little bit, I'm going to play you that audio, just once our team is done cleaning up the curse words and getting it bleeped out, of this woman. And this is what set her off, right? She was like, look, I believe in humanity and the dignity of the human being, and she's a human rights activist at the core of her being. You know, most of us are. Most of us want to see people do the right thing. If you are walking down the street and you see someone beating the everything out of an old lady and you don't feel bad, at least feel bad, let alone do something to defend her, there's something wrong with you. There's something seriously wrong with you and your lack of compassion. So listen, when people say that they feel bad because people are being kidnapped, families are being separated, and they're being sent to concentration camps in El Salvador, if that's the way you're presenting the story, I think, anybody's going to feel bad hearing a story like that until you figure out what's actually going on. And you say, oh, hold on a second. This guy is not just Maryland dad. This guy's not just an innocent man. He's actually a wife-beating, human trafficking, illegal alien that's part of the MS-13 international gang. Oh, well, then maybe I might lack a little compassion here because he's not really a good guy. Maybe he does belong behind bars. Maybe he's a citizen of El Salvador, right? And not a citizen of the United States. Maybe he was granted an asylum case or decision because of people that were unscrupulous during the Biden administration, and that was reversed by the Trump people after they said, this guy doesn't actually meet the criteria to have asylum granted to him. The fact that a gang is going to kill him in El Salvador might get him asylum in one of the neighboring countries to El Salvador, but it's not going to get you asylum in the United States, right? Because the way those laws are written, you can seek asylum, but it's got to be in the first safe place you encounter. I'm pretty sure between the United States and El Salvador, there's 5 different ports of entry where he could have sought asylum legally without having to come all the way to the United States. So clearly his asylum doesn't have to be in the United States. And this is a very key point that a lot of people make, thinking people have some sort of right to come to America to apply for asylum. That's not the case at all. I mean, if that's the case, listen, whenever I have a problem, I'm going to go to Bali, and I'm going to seek asylum in Bali because I like Bali or Tahiti, right? Or one of those beautiful islands there. That's just, that's dumb. Anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Again, your thoughts, your comments, your opinions, because especially if you're in Chicago, where are you at? I want to hear from you. If you're in New York, I want to hear from you. If you're in Oregon, California, I want to hear from you. D.C., Maryland, Idaho, all of you, get lined up. We're going to do your calls and more after this. But I want to know, because there's a lot going on the immigration front. And it's like the more that Trump does to try to make things right, and people are on Trump's side here. Poll after poll comes out, and everybody says, you know what, we agree with the president. Yet, interestingly, you've got the media and the left within the media particularly, they're constantly the very, very squeaky wheel opposition. Anyway, more on that when we return.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America, you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
All right, amigos, Open Phone America. That's what we're here to do. Talk to you guys, you, the American people, 833-482-5337 or 833-4VALDEZ. And I want to get your take on this stuff. But before I do, I want to set the stage real quick with this clip, because CNN's Harry Enton, the chief data analyst at CNN, he compiled a list of several different polls that ask similar questions about, do you, as an American citizen, support the idea of the United States deporting all illegal immigrants? All, not just the criminally violent ones. Listen to this.
Deport all immigrants who are here illegally. All immigrants who are here illegally. 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
Again, that's CNN's Harry Enton, and you've got all these different polls saying the same thing. They're all north of 50%. Most of them are in the 60 percentile. So I want to get your thoughts on this stuff and anything else you want to lend to the conversation. Let's start with Larry calling us from Kensington, Maryland, WMAL. Go right ahead, sir.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Rich.
You bet.
I'm friends with Latino parents, and they're all good people. I mean, seriously, good Christian go to church, wouldn't say, crap if that a mouthful. The little girl comes home and tells me, ICE was at the school today. This elementary school, 4th grade. ICE is at the school today. And I said, well, how did you know that? Said, so-and-so told me. And I said, well, then how did so-and-so know ICE was there? Well, so-and-so told so-and-so. And I said, well, wait a minute. They have to go through the front door. You can't get in the school other than passing the people at the front. So they should be the ones that say there was ICE there. Well, somebody from the front office said that blah, blah, blah. I said, well, how do you know? I mean, somebody tell the teachers that there's ICE agents in the school and they're coming after you guys? No, but, and I said, stop overreacting. Mm-hmm. Your dad's a good guy. He doesn't have any tickets. He doesn't have anything to worry about. Same thing with
you
your
know what,
mom.
Larry? 100% right. The dads, the moms, a lot of people are nervous because they're getting information from people like these, like the ones I'm describing in Chicago. And this panic that you're describing, there was one similar, and it might even be the same one, not that long ago, where Secret Service was visiting a school facility for, I don't know, a visit from somebody from the cabinet. And that got misconstrued into ICE is here to deport a little kid. Some teacher got frantic about it, made a whole rumor that was not even real. And it went all over the news and everywhere, and they had to recant, right? Eventually saying, no, they weren't here for that. It was the Secret Service, and they were here on an unrelated matter. And this is the reality of how fake news works, right? It's the anatomy of fake news. And that's why I spent all this time on this one clip today, because people are trying to make something out of nothing every single day, and it's completely unfair. Larry, excellent point. I appreciate it. Folks, more calls from you and everybody else, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue. Let's go to Tony. Tony's calling us from Silver Spring, Maryland, WMAL. Tony, go for it.
In regards to illegal immigration, yeah, it's true. Biden let everybody in. He shouldn't have done that. I am, generally speaking, not in favor of illegal immigration. And certainly we got to get the criminal migrants out of here. I'm all in favor of that. Where I'm a little bit honestly conflicted is if someone came here illegally, say 20 years ago, and yes, it was a crime. That was a crime to do that. I acknowledge that. But they haven't otherwise committed any crimes. And if we were going to get rid of them, shouldn't we have done it, right away rather than leading them on for 20 years and saying, hey, at some point it's our fault for not getting them out of there. And they've become part of the community. Is it reasonable to think that maybe if someone's been here that long and's been all right, and we didn't do our job in getting them out, that maybe
right.
we can just...
Well, I think I hear your point. And listen, I think President Trump has talked about this a lot, right? He's made this point about the Dreamers, and I think about other people where he said, we have to make a deal, right? I've never heard him take an aggressive posture against somebody who's a tax-paying citizen, owns a business and has kids that have grown up in the country, and said, we got to go after these people. I don't think that's the focus of the Borders are Tom Homan or anybody else. So I think we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. That's going to be another fight like the Epstein fight that's going to rip up half of MAGA. But ultimately, that's really not where we're at, right? We still have so much on our plate with people that are felony criminal aliens that I think we're going to be busy for quite a while. Thanks for the call, my brother. Hasta la próxima, my friends. We'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're back for another hour. I'm hoping that you'll join us. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and it's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. As I mentioned, there's a few items of news on our agenda tonight. Of course, we're talking about the deal, right? The deal or the threat, right? There's a little bit of both, a threat and a deal. There's a threat by President Trump to Putin saying that if Russia doesn't end the war with Ukraine in 50 days, that there will be a lot of tariffs to pay, 100% tariffs to Russia. And as I understood it, there was some mention of potential tariffs on Russia's trading partners as well to really levy a crippling blow on their economic capacity. So we're going to get into that and the deal with NATO, selling the arms to Ukraine by way of NATO in a little bit. But before we do that, I want to again reiterate some of the news that has national import, like what's going on in New York City, right? Here in New York City, where it's rainy all day today, or at least most of the afternoon. Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced governor, who left because of his several sex scandals, harassment, civil lawsuits. He couldn't make it as governor. He ran in the Democrat primary for mayor. He didn't make it there either. He got beat out by the socialist Zoran Mandani, who I now call Moron Mad Manny. And Moron Mad Manny has beat him hands down. You've got the sitting mayor of New York City, elite Eric Adams, who, in my opinion, is no better than Moron Mad Manny at all. Why? Because Eric Adams is just continuing the legacy of the comrade himself, Bill El Bobo de Blasio. Now, these men are all birds of a feather, in my opinion, right? These are people that, they look at the Communist Manifesto and they think, oh, this is not just another book. This is our playbook. Right? They're all about the government seizing the means of production. They're all about embracing these ideas that the government is really the supreme provider. And this, I think, is my fundamental issue with them. Because while they might say they're not this and they're not that, their actions prove otherwise. So you've got one clear path, one person that, was there from the very beginning, cleaning up New York City, for 46 years now, Curtis Sliwa, right? The head of the Guardian Angel Safety Patrol Group, somebody who's been on the radio in New York City for that long as well, or just about as long, 4 decades easy. And he is not being touted as the best path forward, at least not by everybody, right? There's a bunch of people that are interested in this socialist candidate. There's others that are interested in Cuomo, right, the former governor. And then you have, very few that are interested in Eric Adams. But some of the ones interested in Eric Adams come from the MAGA world. And it's interesting, President Trump hasn't called for any endorsement of them, but some of the people in MAGA world are calling for that. They're saying, look, we can't have a communist. We're going to have to go with a socialist instead of a communist, right? Because Eric Adams has been in charge of all of these same socialist programs that Bill de Blasio put there. He's done nothing to end them. He's done nothing except continue these programs. In fact, New York City was not the recruitment hub for Tren de Aragua or for MS-13 when Bill de Blasio was mayor. It became that on Eric Adams' watch. Women weren't getting set on fire during Bill de Blasio's watch, and he was miserable as mayor. That's all happening under Eric Adams' watch, right? People are leaving the city in droves under Eric Adams' watch. Now, that also happened under de Blasio and continues to happen. But let's not make any mistake here that somehow Eric Adams is any better, the lesser of two evils. I would argue no. I would, if I had to, and I hate to do this, but we don't know what Mr. Mad Manny can bring, right? We really don't know. We do know what Eric Adams brings, and it's so bad, not even the Democrats who elected him want him there anymore. A sitting mayor couldn't win a primary in his own party. What does that tell you? So I'm very enthused for the opposition here, for Curtis Sliwa, the clear contrast. Curtis Sliwa, he brings an actual night and day comparison to these three clowns that are, one's Italian, one's black, one is Ugandan. It sounds like the setup for a bad joke, but the reality is it's real life in New York City. I think you go with the other side, the guy that's half Polish, half Italian, all New York, and boom, I think you might actually have a shot at a win. So anyway, that's what's going on in New York City. Now, there's a couple other things I want to get into. A little bit later tonight, we're going to talk about what are the implications of this investigation that was recommended by Congress to the Department of Justice for former FBI Director James Comey, for former CIA Director John Brennan, who, by the way, was born in North Bergen, New Jersey, which is where I went to school. Anyway, what can we expect from that? I would say not a whole lot of anything, right? That's truly my belief. I've become such a cynic with these things. I think I've always been a cynic because I look at the tea leaves a little differently. I think when the federal government, the cops, anybody, when they tell you, it doesn't mean they're not going to get you. I mean, murder investigations, cops will typically come and ask you a lot of questions, and they'll just ask questions. They won't tell you, hey, we're looking at you. They'll just ask you a lot of questions, and they'll leave, and then they want to watch you. So I get that part. But when it comes to this type of case, it's not like you're talking about some husband who maybe, did an insurance job on his wife. No. We're talking about the head of the CIA, former head, and the former head of the FBI. Do you think these guys don't know how to clean up their tracks? Of course they do. So the rules have to be a little different here. Either, you got to come correct or not at all. Because to sit here and make all these announcements that, hey, we're doing an investigation, we're doing this, we're doing that, you may have perjured yourself, put your whole case out there, I don't know that you're going to get much out of it. I mean, now that could be part of the tactic to say, hey, we're going to say we got this, but we really got that. All right, maybe that'll work. But you tell me, remember the time that a politician broke the rules and was held accountable and went to jail? Remember that? No, nobody remembers that. That doesn't happen because these people are all protected by their qualified immunity. Right, so it's the best case they've ever mounted was against Trump, and he won it as high as the Supreme Court when they said, "Yep, presidential immunity is a thing." So I don't see that happening to anybody in any of these positions. I don't see anything happening to Fauci. I do believe all of this stuff is about one thing, and it's about correcting the record. Now that doesn't mean do I want to see him in jail? Sure, I'd love to. Do I think we're going to? Absolutely not. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I take it at President Trump's word. President Trump made a word, which I think was a wise one. He made a comment a while back about why didn't you press charges on Hillary Clinton when you had a chance? In the debate, you famously said, when she said, well, it's a good thing you're not president, he said, that's right, because you'd be in jail. And it was a great mic drop moment. It was wonderful for social media and awesome for his political street cred. But when it came down to it, he said, not me, he said, I think it's a bad idea for the United States government to be prosecuting a former first lady. He said that, not me. And I tend to agree with him. I think he's right. It's not a good look. You're going to give our adversaries and enemies and really spectators something to talk about that, for what? Ego? No, Rich, you're wrong. It's for the sake of accountability, for not letting people get away with things. Listen, I get you. Like I said, would I like to see her locked up? Sure. Do I think we're going to? No. I understand and I agree because I think there's a balance of everything. And you don't want to shift this balance too much. You shake it a little bit, but you don't want to offset everything. Because the minute that you do, you can lose control, right? It's like think of playing chess. You're playing chess, you want to keep the board flat on a table. If that chessboard flips over and your pieces move, now you don't have any control. You don't have any leverage. You're out, right? The pieces are all over the place. All hell has broken loose. So I think that's the thinking behind that. And listen, I think we're going to continue to see things like that. That might be actually what's happening with this Epstein stuff. A lot of people are making comments about Epstein being an intelligence asset or agent. Listen, makes all the sense in the world to me. He might have worked for this government or another, whichever. If he was working for a government and that was his job to recruit people that were into this very illicit practice of engaging in sex with minors and abusing these children, and then him getting it on tape and having blackmail that foreign governments could use against other members of foreign governments, this is incredible leverage. And this is something that I think most people wouldn't want to lose, that leverage. The minute you put it out there, it's no longer leverage, right? You can't say to somebody, it's kind of like the people that said, what do they got on Joe Biden? Maybe they're threatening Hunter. And then Hunter comes out with his own stuff. A video of him with hookers, a video of him getting high, a video of him naked. All that stuff comes out. You got to think, man, maybe he tried to beat him to it. Like, before you say anything bad about me, I'm going to say everything bad about myself. I don't know. I don't know ultimately how that worked out, but I know they didn't have much leverage on him because all his dirt was out there in the streets. So I think for the sake of leverage, you want to keep these things close to your to the vest there. I don't know. We'll talk about that a little bit more straight ahead, but maybe a little bit next hour. But in this hour, straight ahead, I actually want to speak about this Ukraine stuff. What does that look like? The deal on the with the NATO, with the distribution of the weapons, as well as President Trump's threat, and will this line in the sand be the one? And let's see what happens from there. So we're going to do that straight ahead with our guest, who will be joining us right after the break. So don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. Somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
One of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And would like to see it end. It wasn't my war. It was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. It can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it.
That, of course, President Trump in the Oval Office today in a meeting with Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and announcing that if there is not a ceasefire, an end to this war in 50 days, tariffs of 100% are going to be levied on Russia. President Trump went on to talk about a deal with NATO where they're going to allow Ukraine to defend themselves. Listen to this one.
We make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it.
So that is the latest on what's going on in Europe. Now, I want to bring in somebody who understands this stuff really well. Retired U.S. Army Colonel Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur. He's an expert on chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear warfare. Doc, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I want to get your thoughts first on the deal. Of course, there's political implications here with people domestically in the MAGA movement, the president's base, that don't favor this approach to helping Ukraine, more of an isolationist approach, while there are others that are more hawkish. And I think those are just political things. But ultimately, there's also large geopolitical implications. And there's also reports that the Russians have been using less than fair warfare against Ukraine. So where do you weigh in on any of those?
So let me take the latter first. Confirmed use of chemical warfare agents prohibited by the Chemical Weapons Convention ratified in 1997. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, read that as the UN organization for implementing the CWC, has gone down to Ukraine 3 separate times, published 3 separate reports, and recently so did intelligence agencies from the Netherlands and Germany, confirming that of the 9,300 or so munitions that were collected on the battlefield and sent to laboratories, and the over 2,500 casualties who sought medical attention, that in fact choking agent and tear gas or riot control agents, excuse me, have been used in the Ukraine area of operations, mostly in the southern and eastern area, since perhaps the beginning or the onset of combat operations 2022. But the peak so far for chemical warfare agent or CWA attacks was May of last year, 715 confirmed cases. Now, wow. You asked me about the deal that was presented today.
Yes.
In my estimation, it's a nothing sandwich. It's the president really doesn't have many options, right? He tried the diplomatic route. That didn't work. He tried the information route. That didn't work. He only has 2 other options really that are viable: economic, which that's a lever that he's pulling, or the military, the kinetic solution. And unfortunately, that's not a very good option, because that could escalate to a nuclear tit for tat really, really quick.
Right. Well, let's come back to some of that when we return. I agree. There's not a lot of leverage in this situation, and the only alternatives may not be very, very happy ones. Folks, we're coming right back with retired Colonel Jeffrey Brodeur and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Russia has just been accused of running a massive chemical weapons program in Ukraine by Dutch and German intelligence services. This comes as NATO allies reveal Moscow is systematically using banned toxic agents to kill Ukrainian soldiers. The evidence shows Russian forces are dropping chloropicrin-filled light bulbs and bottles from drones onto Ukrainian trenches. According to Dutch Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans, Russia's use of chemical weapons in this war is becoming more normalized, standardized, and widespread. This isn't just random attacks. Intelligence chiefs confirm it's a coordinated military strategy. Dutch military intelligence chief Peter Riesink declared, "This isn't just some ad hoc tinkering at the front line, it is truly part of a large-scale program." Ukrainian sources report nearly 9,000 chemical weapon incidents, with 3 confirmed deaths and over 2,500 injuries from exposure. But here's what makes this revelation particularly damaging for Moscow. The intelligence comes from independent Dutch and German investigations, not just Ukrainian claims. Both the Netherlands Defense Intelligence Service and Germany's BND have verified the systematic nature of these attacks. They've documented how Russian forces specifically use chloropicrine to force soldiers from trenches before shooting them as they flee.
So that right there is the latest on what we know of the weapons programs being deployed by Russia in Ukraine, at Ukraine. And I want to expand on the conversation we were just having with our guest, Colonel Jeffrey Brodeur. He is retired from the United States Army and recognized expert in chemical warfare, biological warfare, radiological, and nuclear warfare as well. And Dr. Brodeur, when you hear this, do you, I mean, obviously it comes as no surprise, and we talked a little bit about it before, but what do you think is the next step? How do you, what is the remedy to at least this part of the conflict?
In terms of chemical warfare agent use, I mean, we're sitting on the sidelines watching it happen. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that the international community can do in terms of penalties, unless we want to, bring formations in and fight side by side with Ukrainians. But Putin is already a war criminal, documented many, many times, and this is an additional charge. In terms of the war itself, it's my observation that Ukraine will never win. Ukraine can never win. And there's one reason why they can never win and will never win. They've had over 3 years to mobilize for war, and they cannot recruit their young to fight for their own freedom. Their young have fled the borders. The soldiers and warriors that initially went to fight, those who still can fight are tired. And they've done this for 3 years. And the weapon systems that the president proposed that we provide are long-range missile systems and air defense. You need infantry to take back ground. That's the only way you win wars. And so until Ukraine can recruit its own and convince its own citizens that they have to fight for their own freedom, the outlook is bleak.
So what is the, if we pull on that thread, so what is it, how does this ultimately end? Does Putin take more of what he's already taken? Does he try to take over the rest of Ukraine since they're not able to win by your estimation? How does this end?
Yeah, I think right now Putin. So everybody, I think, was surprised that the Russian military was as ineffective as it's demonstrated to be. This has turned out to be sort of a war of attrition in the foxholes, and that's primarily why they're using choking agent and riot control agents, because it's a great military tool for dislodging your infantry from foxholes and defensive fighting position and causing them to elevate their own personal needs over combat operations. I think he's trying to, and he's doing a very good job, Putin is, of breaking the will of the people and Zelensky until they tap out, because he knows NATO is not going to cross the boundary.
So with that
and
said,
he's going to take Ukraine and there are two philosophies. The first is the one that I support. The Western world lied to him back in 1992 or 93 when we said we would not expand NATO. He views Ukraine as a former Russian territory and a buffer zone between NATO and his sovereign national interest, security of Russia. Without Ukraine, without that buffer, he's extremely vulnerable. These are his views. There's another camp that I don't subscribe to that he wants to recreate the old Russia. I don't believe that because Belarus was his to take in a red bow, and he chose not to.
So if we go with the first part of what you just put out there, let's say, so he's taking these areas because he's angry about the expansion of NATO. Is there a specific reason why he took these specific areas and not more or closer to the border?
No, I mean, Ukraine is on the border. First of all,
No, I mean specifically along the border.
there are other border countries that are NATO countries, and the penalty for doing that is a bit higher for them. Remember, this is a 7-year war for him. This is not since 2022. He's been at war with Ukraine. He first took Crimea and then worked up to Ukraine. Crimea, right, because of access to the Black Sea. This is the same country. He's just taken more territory. It's the same war. He's been on a war footing for 7 years. These tariffs that are being imposed don't matter much at all. He's already got the country on a war footing.
Right. No, I get that. So I guess my question to you is, what will stop him, in your estimation, short of military intervention?
That's a good question. I can't think of anything.
So ultimately, you're saying that the end of this is somebody somewhere getting involved and pushing back with ground troops.
Yes, and right now the world has decided that's a Ukrainian problem.
Gotcha. Well, Doc, let everybody know how they can find you and more about your outlook on these things.
Yeah, so Ragaku Analytical Devices, easy to spell, and we produce handheld Raman devices that if you're on the battlefield and you're attacked with chemical warfare agents, our device can provide you a report in less than 1 minute with greater than 90% confidence what exactly you're staring at and what you're dealing with. Ragaku Analytical Devices. Sir, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, sir. Likewise. And amigos, your thoughts. Do you think the future is as bleak as the Colonel put it? Your thoughts and more coming up right now. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
What Tom Homan did was say that the federal judge was just plain wrong. And what the judge ruled, just so our viewers know, on Friday is that the tactics that ICE is using are a likely violation of the Constitution, suggesting that immigration agents are detaining people, quote, based on race alone. Homan said that's just not true. What do you think?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time the Trump administration tries to just dismiss a court order. And so it's our job to ensure that we uphold the law, uphold the Constitution. I mean, Holman has said it very clearly in other interviews. They're not even asking for significant findings to detain people. They're going based on appearance, his words, not mine, based on occupation, his words, not mine, based on accents, physical appearance. Then what if I was outside a Home Depot, because I like to do some work around the house, not dressed in a suit? Would I be a target of ICE enforcement under Tom Homan? Probably. And it's just wrong. It's not just due process rights that have become the concern, but racial profiling. When federal agents involved in immigration enforcement are using racial profiling, they're not enforcing the law, they are breaking it.
That is Senator Alex Padilla in an interview with CNN just yesterday with Dana Bash. And very interesting, right, what he's saying here. He talks about Homan's words. I don't know what clip of Tom Homan he's talking about, We've done a number of interviews with Tom Homan on this program, and we played tons of clips from him. And I've never heard him say, based on someone's accent or physical appearance, is why they're issuing arrest warrants. That may be a secondary concern, like, our target is a guy named Kilmar Obrego Garcia, and he's whatever, 5'5", tall, blah, 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 known to speak Spanish with a Salvadorian accent, and, looks like X, Y, and Z, has a beard and wears the baseball cap. This is Chicago Bulls. So if that's what you have to work on, then I could see how they go there and they go, does the guy speak Spanish? As a process of elimination to identify somebody. But in terms of this making it sound like there is a willy-nilly ISIS driving around in unmarked cars just waiting for someone that looks like me to arrest them. I go out every single day. Every single day. I'm about to put a Puerto Rican flag on my car to see if that'll help attract some ICE attention. But guess what? Not happening. I am safe. I am marking myself safe from being deported by ICE. And this is part of the scare tactics that the left is just so, I would say good at, but no, so fixated on is what I'm going to say, so obsessed with. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on this because I think they're out of control. But let's go to some calls here. Let's go to our buddy Paul calling from Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, Zanesville, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Yeah, it's good to speak with you again.
Likewise.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. My first one is on that racial profiling and so forth. I mean, seriously, how many white people come from Honduras, Mexico, or, any of those places? I mean, so that's crazy. The people that come from those countries, they're dark colored, right? So
yeah, I mean, Mexico has a lot of white people, but I get your point, and I think the point they're trying to make is why aren't we going after illegal aliens that are coming here from the UK or from Ireland, which there are some, but this is not about where they're coming from. The issue is we're going after people with felony criminal warrants, and a lot of people came here as part of this human trafficking syndicate from these different criminal gangs, these transnational criminal gangs like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, which happen to be based out of countries in Latin America. So yeah, it's what you're saying. It makes sense, right? These people are from that part of the world. But I again, I'll double down. I don't think anybody's being targeted on this. I think they're being targeted by their crimes. These are wanted individuals.
Yeah, but the left always playing the race card. Never fails. Every election. I get tired of it.
That's true.
But anyway, my second thing is with Ukraine, I do believe that Trump's doing the right thing, with NATO. Let them step up a little bit. I have said this before to the late, great Jim Bohannon and yourself that Putin's a thug, and he's not going to stop. So if Trump, in conjunction with the NATO allies, want to step up the war in Ukraine against Putin, I'm all for it. But we don't have to pay our tax dollars so much. Does that make sense, Rich?
I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that you couple that, Paul, with something that I read in an initial report today that said President Trump was kind of hinting towards. And again, I didn't see the full audio of the conversation. I saw a few clips. So maybe this is something my own wishful thinking, but I could have sworn I read something earlier today that said that Trump was thinking of levying 100% tariffs on Russia and similarly on Russia's trading partners to really cripple their economy. And I think if that were to be the case, where they now have difficulty trading and he puts them in a real bind economically, that may actually work. I don't know if that's going to be the case, so I guess, time will tell. But I agree with you. The measures have to be aggressive in order to get results. Otherwise, we won't get them. And if the response is going to be, well, if you push too hard, Russia might get angry and we might have a nuclear war. Imagine if Trump would have thought that with Iran, right? There's time and a place for caution, and I think we should always exercise caution and do things judiciously. And I agree, like Trump said, this isn't his war. This is Biden's war. But at the end of the day, this is his country, and it's our country, and we got to make sure that we do the right thing here. For the future of everything. And what that looks like right now, my hope is an end to this Russia-Ukraine war. so we can have more peace and more prosperity. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, thank you for the call, my friend. Let me see. Can we do another one here? Let's go to RC calling us from Washington, D.C. WMAL. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, RC here. I agree with our problems that we have with Russia. I think that we're going to have to get Putin out. We're probably going to have to use special forces. We've got a lot of issues there. We got to get to the bottom of it and let the Ukrainian people have their country back. When Biden sat back and let Putin put all the tanks right on the borderline, we had a couple of days. We didn't do anything. We sat there, and he just delayed all the equipment to Ukraine.
A lot of delay on everything. Biden slow-walked everything. He was so slow to react that it actually, in my opinion, caused the war to start, right? Because Biden could have intervened at the very beginning, and he just kind of was like, I remember people saying, it's like they're brothers. They're just having a sibling rivalry. It was really stupid. But I'm with you here. I don't know that I'm with you on the special forces part. I don't think anybody has an appetite for that in America. Now, I think there are some people that are just, desperate to see an end to this. So desperate that they're like my dad would always say, mata al perro y se acaba la rabia. Means, you kill the dog and it's rabid no more. And I get that. It's a very black and white approach. I think this is not such a black and white approach because you've got Russia that's got a very, very singular, isolated war going on with Ukraine. They're not looking to get into any type of protracted military effort with any of the NATO neighbors they have. They're not looking to get into it with the United States. They just want this and leave me alone. And I understand that. However, it's this constant meat grinder, as they say. And I think this is something that it just has to end in order to ensure that life goes on, right? And not with war. So why do we care? We care because of the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances. We signed those saying, hey, look, you give up your nukes and we'll defend you. Had we never signed that, I'd say, look, let them figure it out. But this is why, right? This is why Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO. And they're in the position that they're in because we, in some ways, put them there. RC, thanks for your call. Folks, coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. This is hour number 3, I think, right? Number 3, number 2. Anyway, the pleasure is mine to be with you folks. The phone number for open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. And of course, happy to be with you this Monday evening. We're live, we're national, and we're having our late night national town hall conversation with you, we the people. So feel free to weigh in. I'd love to hear what you have to say. There's a couple of people on hold already. We're going to get to your calls momentarily, as well as others that are joining us. Looking forward to speaking with you. Now, I want to get into a few things this hour. We're going to talk about a little bit of Epstein. We're going to talk a little bit about everything else that's going on, including the Russia, as President Trump would say, the the architects of that, right? James Comey, James Comey and John Brennan, former directors of the FBI and CIA, respectively. And the recently opened investigation to each of them, which I think is an interesting turn of events, because I always felt, right, since the days of, I'd say I solidified this opinion during the Libya hearings, right? Benghazi hearings, Benghazi, Libya, Secretary Clinton, and of course the at the time the infamous Trey Gowdy, right? He would just ask question after question, and he was a former prosecutor, so he was good at asking these questions, and he was good at making sound bites, and it was just really fun to watch, but it didn't do anything, right? If you had the expectation, like a lot of people did, that somehow a criminal referral somehow was like Congress ordering the Department of Justice to arrest these people, you were wrong, right? Because they don't do that, right? FBI directors, as we know, don't make decisions to bring charges. The prosecutor does, and in this case, the prosecutor would be the Attorney General of the United States, or one of their designees, as as pointed out. So ultimately, a lot of this stuff is just that. It's political theater. Now, with the political theater, if you're being a cynic, as I contend to be, that's fine. There's also the release of information, the correction of the record, right? Once you put these things out there, the media is kind of forced to talk about them, just like they're forced to talk about the Epstein stuff, right? Now you have Tapper and CNN and many others who are saying that, what's this reversal from Trump on the, that could be an act of political genius by Trump. And I would say I haven't seen Trump make a misstep yet. I really haven't. At least not this second time around. So I would say good on him, right? Good on Trump for getting the media talking about this Epstein stuff. There was no real public demand, I think, at least nothing emergent, nothing that was going on right now, nothing imminent about we want to hear from this, we want to hear from that, we need to know right now, right? This guy is dead, as far as we know, Jeffrey Epstein. So why are we having this big conversation? I don't know the answer to that. I know there are a bunch of people that believe in military tribunals that are passionately moved by and emotionally moved by the idea that somehow if we put Jeffrey Epstein in jail, it somehow alleviates some of the pain they feel in their hearts that children that are exploited sexually feel. And I'm not trying to be provocative in any way. I'm just saying the FBI has announced, and local law enforcement agencies working in tandem with them in the last several months, and I've tried to bring you lots of these updates, and there have been several where 74 kids rescued, 200 kids rescued, 400 people arrested for child trafficking, child sex abuse, whatever, prostitution, all sorts of things. And it's good to catch the bad guys. It's great to save these kids. I think those are all good things, and they should be celebrated. I do. I tend to notice that there are a group of people on my side of the aisle that are more concerned with Jeffrey Epstein and the outcome of the release of these documents than they are with celebrating those successes. And I know why. Because there are chat boards all over the place. 4chan, Before It's News, there's a bunch of them, where they are fed this incessant amount of information day in and day out about this stuff. And it draws a complete picture with all dots already connected for you. So it's very clear that there's a global cabal, right? This is the belief, that there is a global cabal of satanic child molesters that are thriving on this evil. And they're the ones that have all the levers of power. And that may be true. I'm not saying that it's not. I am saying that is not the mandate of anybody, right? It's law enforcement will always go after people that are committing those types of crimes. Anybody elected to president has to make sure that there is a peace, as leader of the free world. There's a global peace, if you will, without being labeled a globalist. I think there's an imperative to make sure that you handle the economy as best you can, stimulate it as best you can, reduce the amount of government spending. There's certain prerequisites that come with the job. And Trump is, again, in my opinion, he's knocking it out of the park on these, right? He may not be at the goal, but the effort is all there. He's taken all the right steps to get to where he's got to be 5-6 months in, whatever the case is. So makes all the sense in the world to me. I've always felt, and it's because I argue with my brother about this a lot, one of my brothers, that when you put all this emphasis on things because of emotionality, that ultimately you lose track of things, right? We always have to put logic before emotion. You have to. Because once you lead with emotion and you're freaking out about, oh my God, these children. I'm not saying not to care about the children. That's a horrible thing, and you should care about them and pray for them and take whatever action is appropriate. I'm just talking about there's other things, right? There are wars on multiple fronts. There's an information battle that's out there. There's economic warfare that's going on. There's a number of things happening, and this is but a spoke in the wheel, and you have to conduct yourself accordingly. And I think this is why we're having the problem we have. Right? There's a lot of people that have jumped on board with MAGA for that sole reason. They are staunchly against the trafficking of children. And listen, God bless everybody who's against that. We should all be against it. There are a number of people that are only on board with MAGA because of MAHA, right? M-A-H-A, the MAHA movement, where they want to end food dyes and the carcinogenic additives in our food. Super. That's great. You got a bunch of ice cream companies today announcing that they're doing that. You've got others that want to use the power of government to supersede what the Constitution allows and have the military conduct tribunals and arrest every last politician and president and ex-president and everybody they can and sentence them to death on Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. There's a bunch of people that want that to happen. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think that there's already a criminal justice system, and you do what you can with what you got. We don't need to invent new ones or create a new Nuremberg, if you will. But I say all of these things to set the stage as to this is why we're having the rift we're having today. I believe that as Americans, we need to be students of history. We need to look at what has happened before to determine what may happen in the future. And at least not to be blown away if it doesn't, to manage our own expectations. So maybe that's a flawed practice of mine, but it keeps me incredibly sane, if you will, right? I keep my feet on the ground even when I got my head in the clouds with my little tinfoil hat on. I never leave the ground because I realize that, like I said earlier, remember that time that they locked up all those politicians for doing the wrong thing and we the people got justice? Right, me neither. Because that is not an occurrence we've seen. Now, the argument and the pushback on me is going to be, Rich, come on. Well, we realize that's never happened. That's why we voted for Trump. Well, Trump was already president, and we didn't see it then. Trump also said he doesn't think it's a good idea for Hillary Clinton to be prosecuted when specifically asked about that because she's a former First Lady of the United States, and he thought that's not a good look for America. And guess what? I agree with him. Because when push comes to shove, when you are a head of state, when you are the president of the United States, there's a grand responsibility, a grand mantle that's been placed upon his shoulders. And it's not a willy-nilly one where we just get to say, oh, you're going to jail, yep, and you're going to be put to death, yep, and the military decided this. It doesn't work that way. And it's not that I don't want it to work that way. It doesn't work that way. And everybody's got reasons as to why it should and will. And just hold on, trust the plan. You can trust whatever you want to trust. I'm just telling you, I've been doing this stuff for 2 decades now, analyzing politics. And I can tell you, I've never seen what you're describing happen. So if it happens, will I be surprised? Sure. But I've been hearing about it since 2017. So how surprised am I going to be? Not so surprised. I'd probably just say better late than never. Ultimately, I think we need to look at this Epstein stuff and take it for what it is. I know people are freaking out on Trump saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said, why are we still talking about this dead guy? What do you say? The guy that never dies, Jeffrey. In many ways, I feel like that about a lot of rearview mirror things, including these two guys, Brennan and the other one. I believe you have to correct the record. I think you have to continue to chip away to make sure people know the truth, right? Because ultimately, it's the truth that sets you free. I get that. I do. But at the same time, it's more about ensuring that things don't happen in the future, getting the right people in place, dismantling these areas of the deep state power holds that give them this opportunity to do what they do, making sure you take out the nest. Once you've done that, I think we're all in a better place. Anyway, I'm going to talk to a former Watergate lawyer who's going to be joining us momentarily to give us his take on what actually happened here with this particular investigation into Brennan and Comey, specifically over this Epstein stuff. And will it materialize in something? Will he set me straight and say, no, Rich, you're just being a naysayer, and I'm going to prove you wrong? I don't know. But we're going to talk with a former assistant U.S. attorney and a former Watergate lawyer straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
Is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez. And before we get to too deep in this topic, I want to get some of your thoughts. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to John, calling us from Rochester, New York. John in Rochester, New York on WGDJ. John, go right ahead.
Well, I just want to connect a few of the dots together. Want to connect some dots. What's just happened in the last several hours or a couple of days, the auto pen, and that's come up in the news a lot, and Biden didn't even use the pen. He didn't authorize this. He didn't authorize that. I can believe that. Well, what the Trump administration has done, and I'm going to blame Pam Bondi for this, they've let this go on and on and on. They've had the opportunity to try to maybe process this as a crime, as fraud, as treason, and they didn't see their opportunity, and well, whether they won or whether they didn't.
Let me ask you about that, right? So Trump's been in office for 6 months. What statute do you think that Pam Bondi would use to go after the former president of the United States and say, look, I got no proof, but I think just because it looks like these signatures match that you've been using the auto pen, and therefore we're gonna arrest Joe Biden on suspicion of this. Does that sound feasible to you?
We're not going to arrest Joe Biden. We're going to arrest Obama and the rest of them that have been really running the country.
But what crime did they do if the crime is the auto pen?
Half of the time, it's pretty obvious that he didn't even know that there was a bill before Congress or that there was a bill or an executive order that he was signing. That's
I don't know if that, I mean, listen, I think Joe Biden didn't know if he was coming or going many days. But I also know what the Constitution says. And it doesn't say that you have to be of sound mind and sound. It says that if you're not, that it's incumbent upon the cabinet to use the 25th Amendment. And none of that happened. So, again, I get it. I'm with you. This was an affront on the American people. But where's the crime and how do you prosecute these things? This is why. It's not that they're dragging their feet. They don't have a case for this. If they had a case for it to really do something, they would have brought it a long time ago. When you hear people talking about something, it's kind of like, when you're in the street and somebody's like, man, I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to break your jaw. If that guy could really break your jaw, he wouldn't be talking all that smack. He would have broken the jaw already. This is like the rules of life. Now, the reason that they do it in the Trump administration is very clear. Just because these people are able to break the law because they made the law in many ways doesn't mean that we're not able to tell everybody, hey, these guys are a bunch of fakes and phonies and frauds, and they're criminals, and they ought to be in jail. And I think good on Trump for doing that, because he's letting people know all is not what it appears to be, right? He keeps talking about how, I agree, Obama was pulling a lot of strings and he wasn't the elected president. I get that. I also know that, guess what? The next president, God willing, Trump is alive, Trump's going to have a lot of influence over the next president, because large political figures do. Right? I'm sure that Obama leaned heavily on Bill Clinton. So I think we have to look at things and take many of them with a grain of salt. Where there was an actual crime committed, we should prosecute it if we can make the case. Guess what? It's hard to make a case when you're going after dirty cops. They know the rules and they know how to cover their tracks. Every last one of these people is an experienced lawyer. Hillary Clinton started her career in Capitol Hill as a Watergate lawyer. So what does that tell us? That she knows a thing or two about what's going on. So, John, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think that prosecuting Hillary Clinton on what and for what, right? If we could come up with some decent stuff that will withstand the scrutiny of people saying, you're just going after her because you don't like her. You're just going after her because she's a woman. You got to have a real smoking gun. Otherwise, you don't got nothing at all. And I think that's what Trump was saying when he made that comment. All right, John, thanks for the call. Amigos, coming right back. Your thoughts, your calls, and more on this fiasco. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back. I want to take you to Kentucky, where a gunman is dead after killing 2 people in a church and wounding a state trooper in the process. This all started near the Bluegrass Airport in Lexington this morning. The suspect shot that trooper during a traffic stop, then reportedly ditched his car, carjacked another one, then drove to a nearby Baptist church where he started shooting at churchgoers.
Preliminary information indicates that the suspect may have had a connection to the individuals at the church. 4 individuals were shot on church property. 2 female victims were pronounced deceased at the scene.
Responding officers rushed to that church and killed the shooter. Police have not released the suspect's name. As for the wounded officer, he is expected to survive.
That's a report from CBS Chicago. People getting shot at church. And listen to this. This is, this is from ABC News. 2 dead, 3 injured in Kentucky shooting at a church. Suspect shot and killed. 2 women were shot and killed. 2 men were injured at a Kentucky church by a suspect who fled there after shooting a state trooper somewhere else. The suspect allegedly shot Kentucky State Police trooper near the Bluegrass. You heard all that in the report. The guy, he's as old as me. He's 47 years old. His name is Guy. First name Guy, last name House. Guy House. White guy. And he must have been on something because, this is a crazy thing to do, right? Shoot a cop, run to a church, shoot people in a church. I don't know what's going on with this guy. But as we learn more about this, I'll let you know. 2 of the churchgoers, both women, were killed. The other 2 victims were both males taken to the hospital for treatment and are in critical condition. And that's the latest as of this morning or earlier today, Monday. Now, this happened earlier today, around 11:30 in the morning. I'm sorry, 11:30 yesterday morning, and the fallout is still being assessed by the state police there. So, very, very sad news, right? I mean, it's sad to hear that people are going to church and people are getting shot at church. Church shootings seem to be on the rise, whether it's a church shooting or these church suicide bombings. There's a whole lot of that going on. But I want to continue our conversation with you all, we the people. And give you the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. We've had a lot of discussion about immigration, ICE, especially in Chicago. We've had some discussion about this Epstein stuff with John Brennan and James Comey. I want to know from you guys, do you think this is going to amount to anything? I'm a little bit skeptical of this stuff because I don't see it. I would love to see it. I would love to see these guys stopped. I think Comey's smugness is despicable. You know, he's constantly, it doesn't matter what you say about him. He's like, oh, come on, you guys are so stupid. I mean, it's not what he's saying, but that's the look on his face. So, I mean, I'd love nothing more than to send a strong message to these people. But I just don't know that we can. Let's see. Let's see what happens. I want to go to Joe, is calling us from Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. Joe, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yes, sir. I lived in Edgewater Village in Harford County since I was the age of 9 to about 10 and a half. Receiving 3 dead bodies. Before I was 10, I saw a girl that was raped 3 times, had with the knife wounds in her chest, her throat cut. Saw 2 different bodies like that. I've been held hostage in a room for 8 hours with somebody who was looking for their coke. And every time the cops came to see us, they found anything, they took it, and they left. They didn't do anything to help us. That's why we took care of our own in the ghetto. And before you can say anything, I'd like to bring up, it's called Community Resistance and Progress. They used to have that way back in the day before the drugs and the assholes came in to ruin things.
Okay. What is the point you're making here? It's escaping me.
It seems like you'd like to give comments on things where you've never been in that position before.
Like what?
You have a lot of opinions. Well, you have a lot of opinions, like you just said. People may be in the ghetto, or maybe they have a security button, and they might have fear of police. Well, when the police don't treat you right, and you don't walk up to them as a man and tell them what is going on within the situation, like last week, I'm a 45-year-old man. The police were getting ready to arrest somebody at 7-Eleven because somebody in the other in the 7-Eleven, another customer, had a knife and threatened 3 ladies and a little girl. Mm-hmm. And this man had a carrying, permit. He almost got arrested and charged with carrying a gun because he was protecting the ladies and a little girl.
And then you came and saved the day?
Right, as a police officer. Sorry, sir?
I said, is that when you came and saved the day?
No, I'm not allowed because I'm a veteran. I can't do anything unless somebody touches me, pushes me, punches me in the face, or attacks my person. I am not allowed.
Oh, I see. Well, you are allowed to call here and talk a lot of smack, and I just gave you plenty of time to do it. Now, listen, I get paid for my opinions, whether I've experienced those things or not, and usually they're based on experience. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. It wasn't necessarily the ghetto, but the 80s was a rough time in New York City, so I can only give you what I know from what I've seen. And, as a police chaplain in the city of Newark, I've seen homicides. I've seen grown men that are gang members cry as a result of losing family members to violence related to their gang life. Not something I've personally experienced, but things I've seen with my own 2 eyes. So, when I give you my opinions on things, it's usually based on something that I've seen.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, but sometimes you cut the line a little cross, a very personal level when some people either do get out and then they're counted in that area. And like I said, as a veteran, I try to help people, and then the police come and then want to count you as the bad guy. You want to shoot them in their face.
Oh, well, that's up to you, Joe. I don't think you should be shooting anybody in the face. But ultimately, you can find an exception to any rule. I think that the case that I've been making, if you pay attention, is that most cops don't show up to work today to say, hey, I'm going to give you a hard time. Now, there are situations where you're going to find a bad cop, sure. But I prefaced my statement earlier with saying, based on my experience with the Nutley Police Department, where I was part of their police reserve, I went to an abbreviated police academy to be able to do that. And my brothers were both NYPD cops for their entire career. And then my other brother went and served as a Fed for another 15 or 20 years that he did there. So he's been a cop for a very long time. And ultimately, this is how life works, right? You're not going to ever stop people from having an opinion. right? I host this radio show. People call here every night talking about people they've never met. They talk about Trump. They talk about Putin. They talk about Biden. Most people haven't met any of these people. So I'm still failing to understand or grasp, I guess, your complaint or your issue.
You've never walked those steps. You have the brothers that have, but you have never
Who
walked
cares
those steps.
is my point, right? I've never killed people, and I'm going to give you my opinion that I think it's wrong to kill people. Killing people is something you shouldn't do. What is wrong with people saying you shouldn't rape little kids, teachers shouldn't sexualize children just because they've never been through that?
Neither should preachers. Put the BDUs on and see how you feel.
For what? For what purpose? To make you happy? Who are you?
I'm a veteran. How much do you weigh, sir?
Good for you. I weigh 193 pounds. Why are you so
How
interested?
tall are you?
You're interested in men?
No, I want to see if you're a fat ass or not.
I'm 5'8". I'm 193 pounds, and I'm not afraid of a fight. John, where are you, sir? John, speak up.
Yeah.
Be a man.
Oh, I'm being a man, but if you can't go 30 seconds scrapping and swinging, then you're going to get tore up in the street. And
Well, you know what? Maybe one day you'll have the opportunity to find out.
Yeah, you're a sweetheart.
And you're a real telephone tough guy. Joe in Cumberland. Got nothing better to do at 11-something at night than call me and try to size me up on the radio. Joe, if any of us is a fat ass, and I'm a retired fat ass, by the way, I can tell that you have probably had 1 or 3 too many visits to the late-night burger place. Based on your voice, it sounds like you're carrying not only a tire around your waist, but one around your neck. And that's not good for you, brother. You might want to hit the diet a little bit. Anyway, folks, I'm going to take a pause right here. Coming right back, Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD. Who else? Paul in Boise, one of the faithful. Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue. I don't want anybody asking me for my number, my ring size, my shoe size. I'm not giving that information out. I'm not here for that, so take it easy. But let's see. We're going to go now to, who did we leave off with here? All right. Where did we go? Oh, Joe, right? I think it was Joe in Bethel, Connecticut. Go right ahead.
Hello, Mr. Valdez.
Joe, how are you, sir?
I don't know how relevant my question is, but as my favorite philosopher, what do you think of the phrase, if the gold rusts, what will the iron do?
Yeah, well, this is a very good statement, right? And I think it's indicative of what we're dealing with now. We're looking at this elite class of people in our government that we expect to do better, to do more, to be above reproach, to be uncorruptible, and instead we've got them being the biggest criminals, and they're so good at it they can skirt any type of consequence because they know the law, right? If you're the FBI director, you can pretty much do what you want with impunity because why? You know how to walk things right up to the line without crossing it and still get the result you're looking for. Kind of like if you're FBI director and you want to put a damper on Hillary Clinton's campaign, you can say, I'm writing a memo and I'm going to make an announcement here and I'm going to say X, Y, and Z, and she acted grossly irresponsible and blah, 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 things that were not his position. Right? It was up to the Attorney General to press charges or not. But yet, since the Attorney General wasn't doing anything, he decided, let me do this. Now, some might say that's an act of patriotism. Others might say it's a dereliction of duty. Bottom line is, he did what he wanted to do for his own political expediency. And That is what James Comey did, and had an outcome, right? There was an outcome. Whether it was the one he wanted or not, I don't know. But there was definitely an outcome with that. So I think we look at Comey et al., Trump included, right, as the gold. And I got to say, in looking in your analogy, I think Trump's probably a lot closer to the gold than the rest of these deep state a-holes, right? I think Trump has really, when it comes to handling critique and whatnot, he's a fighter. He fights, but he stays in his own upper echelon, if you will, right? He doesn't take the bait as much as he used to. Good. I think that's great. He realizes a lot of things aren't worth his time, and he truly is an example of the gold. These guys are the example of the gold rusting, right? And of course, if they're expected to operate at a higher standard, Joe, then of course the iron is going to rust even quicker, I think as the saying goes. And I think that's part of the problem that we have. I think the larger part of all of this is that people are so consumed with self, with ego, and this is coming from somebody that's an egomaniac himself, right? I realize that we all, right? I'm in the business of giving my opinion on the radio and my thoughts and whatnot. And then occasionally we get callers like the one we just had, who's so obsessed with his own ego that he was angry at mine. And I get it. It's not the first time. I've dealt with plenty of guys like that. I say that to say we've kind of lost sight of the goal, right? Service has to be bigger than self. We have to find something that we care about that's bigger and more important than me, myself, and I. For me, what I try to use to keep me humble is my faith, my prayer life, my belief in Jesus, my hope that I can one day be at that level, or strive to be closer to that level daily. And it's a long road for sure. I'm super far from it. So I guess the good news is I have plenty of work ahead of me. But ultimately, I think that's what we're talking about here. And it's the fact that we have allowed morality and our faith and our belief in something larger to dissipate. And because we're so egocentric, and I use we loosely, I'm saying many people, those in government that are serving themselves instead of using the idea of service before self. And I think that's really what this boils down to. So, Joe, thanks for the question. It's very thought-provoking. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in Connecticut, WLAD in the building. Let us continue. Where do we go? We go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, streaming the show. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Good evening.
Yes,
let
sir.
me mention first Hemline School. I used to go to that in grammar school. That's the one with the Secret Service who went after somebody who made a threat.
Yes.
Yeah, Hemline School, yeah. But moving on here, so I am glad to see that ICE is going to be blown up, these bond hearings, and President Trump is considering using JAGs instead of these judges because they're being dismissed.
Yeah, you got to think outside the box and stay within the lines, right? And that's his goal. That's his job, and I think he's so good at it. This is why I think the left is so mad, because he doesn't color outside of the lines, but he definitely thinks outside of the box. And that's why he wins when he goes to court, because he makes sound legal arguments. He's figured out a way to get around what the status quo has been. And to get to get to the actual result of things like this birthright citizenship thing, right? I think anybody who takes the time to really thoughtfully think about birthright citizenship, just as an example, thinking, did we really intend for people that were foreign-born employees working abroad in the United States to get married, have a kid, and for that kid to be a citizen of the United States, right? I'll use a couple of examples here. Ted Cruz, right? Ted Cruz, right? He was born in Canada. Does that make him a Canadian citizen or an American citizen? I think he's an American citizen, right? Because it happened on a short trip or whatever the case was surrounding his birth. I don't know all the details. I just know he's not a Canadian. John McCain was born in Panama, right? And I guess technically it was the Canal Zone, but it was as part of his dad's military service. And then they came back to Arizona or whatever. So he's a citizen of the United States. He was able to run for president. That I think is the expectation, that you are a product of your family, and your family is a citizen of somewhere. and you can't just automatically assume that you're going to be a citizen of the place that you're born in just because you happen to be there at that moment. I don't think that was ever the goal, right? Whether you're serving as an ambassador or anything else. And I use that example to what you're talking about because using a JAG officer, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. These are, government lawyers that are ready to go, judges, and why not, right? You have to use, you have to think like a businessman, right? If you're building a building and say, oh, these guys can't do it. What about these guys? I got guys that do this stuff. And ultimately, I think that's an industrious way of thinking, and I think that's why so many people like President Trump. Eduardo, Tampa, Florida. I got to take a pause right here. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, Rich Valdez, and I want to go to WDEL, Wilmington, Delaware. Check in with Doc. Doc, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, Rich. A whole lot in the news and everything else. But kind of stress one thing about the MAGA Nation and the people calling your show and everything, even with you to a degree. I'd like to know one thing from you philosophically. Since Ukraine is on, and I'm of Ukraine heritage, so I'm of course biased. I apologize for that.
Sure.
But since Ukraine is on the border with Russia, and Russia is a dire enemy of the United States, Israel is in the middle of nowhere. I'd like to know from the MAGA Nation and the people calling in your show and your so-called experts why Israel is more important strategically to the United States than it is Ukraine. And you as well, sir.
Sure.
Why is Israel more important than Ukraine? I'd like to know that real quick.
I don't know that it's more important, but I will say when you say it's in the middle of nowhere, I would say it's in the middle of a region where there's a number of enemies of ours. And recently we made some friends with those that don't want to be in the same company, right? You're talking like Saudi and UAE and the rest of them. So I think it's almost a very similar equation. It's just we have NATO in Europe and we don't have NATO in the Middle East. So in that regard, the only game in town is Israel in terms of an alliance in the Middle East. There's Ukraine, and then, of course, there's all of NATO. Doc, I love you, brother. Thanks for the call. Godspeed to you. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless America. I'm Rich Valdez.